My ex-wife turned up to our divorce hearing with a baby bump. She was clearly hoping it would guarantee her some kind of financial windfall, until the judge asked her one simple question. Have you ever witnessed someone ruin their own case live in court? Because that's exactly what Jessica, my ex, managed to do. Looking back, I should have expected some kind of stunt. The entire divorce had been a circus from the beginning. Endless delays, outbursts, and ridiculous motions clearly meant to waste time and wear me down. If Jessica had put half that energy into being a decent partner instead of trying to sabotage my life, we might not have ended up in front of a judge. So when she entered the courtroom, obviously pregnant, I nearly burst out laughing. Not because I had the slightest suspicion the baby was mine, I didn't, but because I could practically see the scheme unfolding in her mind, like she was acting in some bargain bin daytime drama. Her angle was obvious. Play the helpless, deserted, expectant mother in hopes that the judge would ignore all logic and our airtight prenup and force me to cough up money out of pity. I could already picture the speech she rehearsed in front of the mirror. Your Honor, I've been left alone with a child on the way. No support, no stability. How am I supposed to survive? All while shooting me those fake sad glances, waiting for me to squirm. But she was in for a surprise. I wasn't going to panic, and I certainly wasn't going to offer her assent to save face. Jessica made one fatal error. She thought I hadn't already seen this coming. She had no idea how long I'd been preparing. Months, in fact. The truth is, Jessica wasn't just a lousy spouse. She was a terrible liar. And the moment the judge asked her the one question I knew was coming, her entire charade would collapse. She strolled into the courtroom with that smug, self-satisfied air, like she already had the case won. One hand gently resting on her stomach, the other pushing her hair behind her ear with fake modesty, like she wasn't about to try to defraud the court. She even added a well-timed sigh as she sat down, like the weight of her own nonsense was too much to bear. I didn't react. Didn't need to. Unlike Jessica, I hadn't walked in blind. I was prepared. So was my lawyer, Ethan. Now Ethan was a rare breed, the kind of attorney who could smile politely while filleting you alive with legal precision. I've never been a fan of lawyers, but after watching him tear apart every one of Jessica's little antics over the course of our divorce, I couldn't have been more thankful he was in my corner. Jessica, meanwhile, had already burned through 3 different lawyers by the time we made it to this final hearing. The one she showed up with? A rookie, fresh out of law school, eyes wide, probably praying for a miracle win to launch his career. I almost pitied him. Almost. This wasn't Jessica's first attempt at weaponized victimhood. She'd played this game before, not the pregnancy, but the emotional manipulation, the sad little act, the poor me routine. Your Honor, I'm just a woman trying to survive. Please have mercy. And worse, it had worked. Even my own mother fell for it. Just a week before the hearing, my mom called me, her voice weary. Just settle, she pleaded. You don't want this dragging on forever. I closed my eyes and pinched the bridge of my nose. Mom, she's not getting a dime. That's why we have a prenup. But she's pregnant, she said. You really want that on your conscience? I nearly exploded. This isn't my baby, I said flatly. She went quiet for a beat. Are you sure? I laughed bitterly. Mom, she cheated, over and over. I caught her red-handed. I paused, then added, and you know the part that really stings? If this was my kid, she wouldn't even have to ask. I'd be there. I'd take care of them. No games. That's the difference between us. She manipulates. I take responsibility. My mom didn't argue after that, just a long sigh. I just don't want this to get even uglier. It was already a mess. But I promised her I'd deal with it. Which brings us back to that morning in court. The judge entered and the hearing began. Jessica's lawyer jumped right into a pity speech like he was auditioning for a drama competition. Your Honor, My client has been placed in an incredibly difficult position. She is pregnant, unemployed, and emotionally devastated from the financial burden of this prolonged divorce. Jessica added a few sniffles for effect. Her eyes glistened. She played the role, but I didn't even flinch. Ethan? He just sat there with a calm smile, watching the performance unfold like he'd seen this show before, and already knew the ending. Then he rose from his seat, composed, deliberate, unshaken. "Your Honor," he began smoothly, "while we do extend our sympathy to Ms. Parker, there are several critical issues that must be addressed before we proceed." He pivoted slightly, eyes locking on Jessica's attorney, the man who also happened to be the father of her unborn child. That's when it hit her. She tensed up, just barely but noticeably. I'd seen this moment coming. She hadn't. Jessica had come in expecting to be untouchable, thinking the court would be swayed by her vulnerable image, that tears and timing would be enough to secure a generous payout. But unless I was the father, her pregnancy was irrelevant in the eyes of the law. Her attorney faltered, uncertain. Then, weakly, he said, "My client believes the child belongs to the petitioner." I almost laughed aloud. Believes? Ethan didn't so much as blink. "She believes. So no evidence?" he replied coolly. Jessica shifted in her seat, clearly rattled. The judge leaned forward, gaze sharp. "Ms. Parker," he said, "have you obtained a paternity test?" Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again, fumbling. I assumed—" "You assumed?" the judge repeated, unimpressed. "Ms. Parker, is there any actual evidence tying the petitioner to your pregnancy?" Jessica's lawyer looked like the ground might swallow him whole. She had turned pale as the courtroom walls. I leaned back, savoring the unraveling. Ethan wasn't done. "Your Honor, we have compelling reason to believe the child is not my client's," he said. He laid out a stack of photographs. Taken 2 months after Jessica and I had separated, the images showed her on a sunny vacation with another man, smiling, holding hands, sharing a kiss. Proof enough that she'd moved on. Then came the fatal blow. Sliding another folder across the table, Ethan said, "Additionally, we've obtained Ms. Parker's medical records through subpoena. They show her first documented positive pregnancy test occurred months after she and my client had any contact." Jessica's face cracked, panic bleeding through the makeup. Her lawyer stared at her blindsided, realizing he'd been left completely in the dark. The judge exhaled, long and heavy, shaking his head. "Ms. Parker, this court does not tolerate deceit," he said. "Given the timeline and submitted evidence, there is no legal basis for financial support. The prenuptial agreement remains in effect. You will not be awarded alimony or any additional compensation." And just like that, boom. Jessica recoiled as if struck, breath catching in her throat. "But, Your Honor." "This hearing is concluded," the judge said firmly. She sat frozen, stunned, the judge's words still echoing. I could practically see the gears turning, her mind scrambling for an exit. This wasn't the story she'd written in her head. In her version, she cried a little, looked helpless, and walked away with a steady stream of income. Instead, she was dismantled, exposed, alone. Her attorney didn't even glance at her. He stared blankly at the floor, likely reconsidering every step that led him to represent her. Jessica gripped the edge of the table as if holding on to the last pieces of her collapsing plan. And then, the meltdown. "But this isn't fair!" she cried out, voice pitching high with desperation. "I'm about to have a baby, and he just gets to walk away." The judge rubbed his temples, visibly exhausted. "Ms. Parker," he said sharply, "emotional arguments do not override legal standards. Unless paternity is proven, your pregnancy has no bearing on this divorce." He raised his hand. A full stop. "That's enough," she snapped. Jessica spun in her chair, glaring at me. "You're really going to do this?" she demanded. "To your own child?" Her final play. One last desperate attempt to seed doubt, even after everything. The courtroom went still. I smiled. Slow, icy, unforgiving. "You really want to go there, Jessica?" I asked, voice calm. "You want to officially accuse me of being the father? Because I'll request a court-ordered paternity test right now." Her face twitched. She had no move left, and everyone in the room knew it. The judge didn't even bother to respond this time. He just turned to the clerk and said, "Adjourned." It was over. Jessica had lost. But for me, the performance wasn't quite finished. The curtain had dropped, but I wasn't done watching her fall apart. Ethan and I stepped out of the courtroom side by side, my mother a few paces behind us. I half expected Jessica to slip away unnoticed, tail between her legs, but of course, subtlety was never her style. She came charging out moments later, heels striking the tile like gunshots, her face flushed with fury, hands trembling. "You're disgusting," she hissed, venom lacing her words. "You let me sit there, humiliated." I turned to face her slowly, scanning her from head to toe. "Humiliated?" I asked calmly. "Do you mean when you tried to lie your way through court, or when you realized I was already 5 moves ahead?" Her jaw tightened, and her eyes burned with rage. "You orchestrated this. You set me up." I gave her a cold smile. "No, darling. You orchestrated your own downfall. I just gave you the stage." For a moment she looked like she might lunge at me, but instead she spun toward my mother, clinging to one final shred of hope. "You're seriously okay with this?" she demanded. "With what your son did to me?" My mom paused, arms folding slowly across her chest. "No," she replied evenly. "I'm not okay with what you did to him. You fooled all of us once. Never again." Jessica's lower lip trembled. For a second, I wondered if she might break down, but then her temper snapped like a twig. "I hope you rot," she spat, stepping forward like she might claw my face. "I hope you—" "Miss Parker." The interruption came from behind her, firm and unmistakably official. She froze mid-step. 2 court officers had entered the hallway. "You'll need to come with us," one of them said plainly. She whirled around, confused. "What? Why?" "The judge has requested a formal inquiry," the officer explained. "Potential charges of perjury and fraud. We have questions." Panic flared in her eyes. "Wait, no, that's not—" But it was already over. The officers took her by the arms and calmly escorted her back through the courtroom doors. I exhaled slowly, tension draining from my shoulders. Ethan clapped me on the back. "Tell me that wasn't the most satisfying thing you've ever seen." I allowed myself a small grin. It really was. Jessica vanished behind those doors and I didn't follow. I didn't need to. The second those officers took control, she stopped being my concern. Still, I kept tabs. It turned out the judge was more than just irritated. He wanted to make an example of her. Pretending to be broke was one thing. Trying to manipulate a court of law, another, and lying under oath, that crossed the line into perjury. Her bogus alimony claim didn't just get tossed, it triggered a full investigation. Her story crumbled fast. Within weeks, the court levied fines for wasting its time. Her lawyer dropped her like a hot coal. Her attempt to apply for government assistance? Rejected. Turns out you need verified paternity for that. Something she couldn't provide. And the final blow? Her new boyfriend walked away. Apparently, when my attorney presented those vacation photos in court, pictures with timestamps that didn't line up with her version of events, the guy started connecting the dots. Realized he probably wasn't the only one she'd been seeing. Suddenly, he didn't feel so confident about being the dad. I can only imagine how that conversation went down. A few months after the case wrapped up, I got a message from an unfamiliar number. "Jessica, I hope you're happy." I stared at it for a moment, then typed back, "I am. Thanks for asking." Then I blocked the number. No need to hear from her ever again. She had spent years trying to manipulate me, drain me, control my every move. But now, she had no one left. No lies to hide behind, no allies to lean on. And for the first time in a long time, I was finally free.